Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we do return their daily shows, but with very little to bring you in terms of what is happening with Spurs in the transfer market. That is about to change, potentially. If you were to the first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're of course on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Blue Sky too. We're welcoming back a familiar or two familiar returning faces in one of the special guests, one alongside me, who only shows his face during a transfer window. It's his biggest regret so far, 21 days in. I've got Jamie Brown back from the Daily Hotspur. Jay, how are you?
I'm very good, Ricky. Obviously just a little bit worried about you. Obviously doing so many shows. I'm surprised you'll be the next one getting a hamstring injury, I'm sure. But look, obviously difficult time being a Spurs fan at the moment. Results have been shocking. The transfer window is very dry, 21 days in. Obviously, injuries continuing to pile up. Obviously, we've got more news today, more injuries. So hopefully Dharmesh, our fantastic guest, is going to bring us some good news. But it's Spurs, so we know that we're not going to put any pressure on them to deliver that good news because we know there's not a lot of great news. So, all good other than that.
Yeah, we're getting to a point where I'm quite concerned. You mentioned me getting a hamstring. I'm worried our guests might get a hamstring injury the way we are dropping like flies over here. We went through a bout of illness recently last one Spurs, but it simply wiped out a lot of the team. They come back gradually one by one, but we're still making better recoveries than a lot of the Spurs boys at the moment, and we give them our best. Welcoming back to Last Word on Spurs. Look, always brings us a story, some good, some bad. Reporter, presenter, broadcaster, icon of Sky Sports News. He is the wonderful, the brilliant Dharmesh Sheth returns to Last Word on Spurs. Darms, it's normally only twice a season, so we have to take our time with you and absolutely enjoy it. How are you? Lovely to be back here. And you are smiling, unlike maybe me and Jay at certain points during this show.
No, the reason I'm smiling is, thanks for having me back, by the way. Icon, thanks very much for that. I've never been called that before. But
that was on the running order.
The reason I think I put that in, didn't I? Just stick that in. And the reason I'm smiling is because before we went on air, you should have recorded that.
I mean, I always say the best conversation when we're off
Ricky's on the floor already.
I've been on the floor for most of the season, Dom. I've been waiting for Bridget. To pick me back up. Hopefully, he'll pick me back up towards the end of it. Honestly, gosh. It's been challenging. It's been challenging. That's why we love having conversations. At this point of the year, because we get a great opportunity to speak to a lot of the wonderful, journalists that are out there, media personalities, people like you that are obviously inside the game, see a lot, talk a lot about football. And it gives us a chance just to, steer away a little bit from what's going on the pitch, which we don't even turn off the pitch, which is, part of me thinks I want to go back on the pitch from what I've been seeing off the pitch. I'm at a point now where I don't know whether I prefer on or off the pitch, given what I'm seeing with Tottenham right now. Take me away, Dom. Take me away. I've been doing this for 7-8 years. I honestly think this is the most tested it's been. I'm quite thinking even a family away with, even a holiday away with the kids at this rate is becoming easier than this. Right. My wife better not hear that. She's planning for saying, I think, to try and whisk me away. Right. Let's get into everything Tottenham on this show. We'll be talking about where we are on the future of Ange Postecoglou, what the window looks like for Spurs in the remaining days. I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm saying the remaining days because we are 21 days in. We're already halfway through the window. Spurs so far have signed an alternative goalkeeper that, as many know, was brought forward, which should have been done, of course, in the summer. So what I'll do, I'm going to shut up, which is pretty hard to do. I'm going to hand over to the wonderful Jamie Brown to kickstart this episode of Last Word on Spurs. Jay, over to you, my man.
Yeah, so obviously, the big debate at the moment around Spurs, obviously the situation of our manager, results. Everyone knows kind of how poor it's been. I think was it 2 wins in 9? Might even be less than that. I think we'll get crucified in the comments if I did get it wrong. Yeah, as you can see there, shocking results at the moment. Obviously down in 15th place. Obviously a big week coming up for Spurs now. We've obviously got key Europa League clashes against Hoffenheim. Then, of course, I don't even want to say it, but obviously almost a relegation, a big 3-pointer against Leicester City. So, Dharmesh, obviously just great to get a little overview on kind of where the club are at with Ange at the moment, kind of where are they standing on him in terms of future. I know a lot of Spurs fans were kind of expecting maybe we might get some big breaking news after that Everton game, obviously losing 3-2. But just be good to get kind of your take on the general overview of where Spurs are at with Ange at the moment?
I mean, the information that we're getting is that they want to back him. They want him to work. They plan to back him. I think there is an understanding. You've just shown those stats there. You've shown the league table. It doesn't make for pleasant reading. Everybody knows that. And I think everyone within Tottenham knows that. Ange Postecoglou knows that. And he knows how it's going to work. Look, you can't argue with those stats. It doesn't look great for Tottenham. But they brought in Ange Postecoglou. He's been there for a season and a half. They want him to work. And I think there's an understanding, while the results haven't been great, there's also an understanding that, you know, this predicament has been brought on, not least by bad performances. You've got to accept that, but the injury situation as well. And I know people don't want to talk about it, but just have a look at that. I mean, it looks unprecedented to me, the number of first team players that are out and the positions that they would actually fill. We're not talking like, you know, maybe there's a winger out here or a holding midfielder out there. We're talking about your first choice central defense, your first choice goalkeeper, and your first choice striker. Brennan Johnson, who was on fire earlier on in the season. Yves Bissouma, and Bentancur, your central midfielders. Udogie, the wing back. Ben Davies has literally just come back. I mean, you could go on and on and on. And I know Tottenham fans don't want to hear that, and it's not an excuse. To me, you've got to put it into context that the injury situation is so bad that it's giving light to these performances that you're seeing at the moment. And of course, I know people can just simply brush it off. Oh, it's the injuries. Yeah, but every club gets injuries. But if you were to compare this to, you know, some of the clubs that are fighting higher up in the league, if you were to put the equivalent injuries into their team for the length of time that these players are out for, would they be fighting near the top of the table or not? We'll never know because they haven't had those injuries that Tottenham have had. But I think that needs to be taken into account.
Don't say so much. Look, we appreciate at the moment, can I just say, there's such a definitive split in the Spurs fan base with regards to whether some still feel Ange Postecoglou can turn around the current situation the club find themselves in terms of league position. But we also are acutely aware they have got, of course, those 3 cups that, in terms of, say, those cups, obviously that semi-final against Liverpool to come. They've got that away tie Aston Villa, which isn't going to be easy. And as Darm's mentioned there, they've got one of 2 absolutely crucial Europa League games where it's going to be a very interesting next 2 or 3 weeks, which ultimately you do feel is going to determine Ange Postecoglou's future. Jamie just briefly touched upon there, Darms, some of the stats around Ange, which, look, they do make for absolute damning reading. It is only 1 point from a possible 18 in their last 6. It's 1 league win in their last 10. We've lost the first 3 games of 2025. The first time we've done that in a calendar year since the 93-94 season when we lost 7 in a row. We currently stand with 12 defeats in the Premier League. We haven't lost this many after 22 games since the 97-98 season. And, you know, again, we look at the fact 30 points of a possible 87 collected and currently averaging a points per game of 1.09, which is currently the lowest when you scale the way back in the last 20 years of managers at Tottenham. And I think, look, we know managers have been sacked for far less that have been employed by Daniel Levy. And when you couple that, they've taken just 4 points out of a possible 24 against Leicester, Brighton, Palace, Ipswich, Fulham, Bournemouth, Forest, Wolves. And since that win against Man City, which was a tremendous win away at Man City, if you were to judge the table from then, Tottenham would be in the bottom 3. And as Jamie's touched upon, Spurs do currently sit 15th in the Premier League. They are, as things stands, 8 points off the relegation zone. They're 14 points off the current top 4, which normally the club seem to always measure as a target, the top 4. I just wonder in your mind, Dom, do you say there for the moment they're backing Ange Postecoglou? There will be an argument amongst the fan base that he has continually, you know, not cried, but made it very clear he needs help. He said that before the window opened. He said that during the window has opened. I just wonder, you know, by the fact we are 21 days in and all the business Tottenham have done has been an alternative goalkeeper so far, what do you think Daniel Levy's tipping point will be? Because I think it's fair to say for a lot of Tottenham fans out there, whatever you think about Ange Postecoglou during his time at Tottenham, he hasn't really been backed, bar bringing in a established first team player in Dominic Solanke. And look, Graham Berger have emerged this season. Many would say through game time that's been given to them. Do you have a feeling on what Daniel Levy's tipping point would be for Ange?
Well, as in what it would take if for Daniel Levy to say, look, enough's enough.
Yep.
I honestly don't know. At the moment, I don't think there is a tipping point, because I think they, like I said before, they want to back him. They want Ange Postecoglou to work. And you had that situation with Jose Mourinho, didn't you? When just before the cup final that he had got them to, Jose Mourinho gets sacked. I don't think he wants to put himself in a position where, if I know it's going to be a tough ask, you're going to Anfield with a 1-0 lead. Some are saying, look, that's not enough. It's Liverpool will go on and win that game. I think, even the most optimistic Tottenham fans are still worried that they're not going to get to that final. But surely you've got to give them the chance to try and get to that League Cup final. I mean, so far in this run, I know it's not been great in the league, admittedly, but in this run for the League Cup, they've beaten Manchester United, they've beaten Manchester City as well, have they? In this League Cup run?
Man City, yep, they have.
And they've beaten Liverpool, albeit over 2 legs, in the first leg by 1-0. So on that, maybe he deserves that chance to maybe see that through. And then if maybe, those competitions aren't there anymore, well before the end of the season, then maybe is that the tipping point for Daniel Levy. But as far as we're aware at the moment, they want to back him and they want to see him succeed at Tottenham.
Again, I will pass over to Jay, because I think, again, there'll be a lot of fans, and it's not your fault here, Darms, when you say that word, they want to back him. Backing Ange Postecoglou would have been before the window opened, giving him the players required, even before and during his decimation of injuries, to help him actually get results during this period. I mean, many will probably feel that, backing him maybe is a bit too late. The damage has already been done in terms of the Premier League, and it's almost damage limitation now to save and salvage a league season. Let me hand over to Jay, because there's a lot of questions around a lot of different topics. So I'll hand back over to Jay. Because I want the show to spiral out of control like Tottenham's domestic season.
Yeah, I mean as well, like, obviously, clearly they are waiting for players to come back. I think we knew we needed a central defender to come in. As you can see, to be without Romero and Van der Ven for so long, that's just really killed us. They are so key for the way that we play, obviously, especially Van der Ven, given his pace at the back. So they needed to go and replace them. We know that Van der Ven's obviously got a poor history with injuries. So, that was again there. It was just, and what happens when they get injured again and the window's closed. So that for me is a big concern. Just looking at obviously those list of injuries. I mean, there are several players there who have hamstring injuries, and now obviously Ange Postecoglou, during his time at Celtic, picked up a lot of or he didn't personally himself, but obviously his players suffered a lot of hamstring injuries. So it would just be interesting to get your take on, is there a possibility that Ange's way of playing, maybe his high intense methods are to kind of contributing towards these factors? Or is it just a case of, I mean, look, the list keeps on going because, they're just, these players are having to do so much because this player's out, and then obviously that's why it grows. So it would just be interesting to get your take on that list of injuries and maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, Jamie, to actually say categorically that, these injuries are as a result of Ange's training methods and how he prepares the team. But I can't see a scenario where you've got a medical team at Tottenham, you've got medical experts there at Tottenham, where you're going to have a situation where they call it the red zone, don't they? When players are on the verge of maybe getting injured. All of that messaging will have been given to Ange Postecoglou. And I can't imagine a scenario where if someone is at a real risk of getting injured, he'd continue to play them. That might mean it is a bad coincidence, but until he gets asked that question and he has an answer for that question, because I'm sure he would be listening to everyone at the club and getting the advice of whether players are fit enough to play to last that 90 minutes. Of course, it doesn't look good. The optics aren't great. I get that because of all of the injuries and the similar kind of muscular injuries that these players are getting. And I've heard players, I've heard pundits talking about it, that, these injuries as much as there is a sympathy towards Tottenham, is it because of the way that Ange is training them and the way that this style of play requires them to maybe run up and down the pitch like a Van de Ven has had to do? And is that making more susceptible to these hamstring injuries? Until you get it definitively from Spurs, it's very difficult to just speculate and say that is the reason why these injuries are happening. But I'm sure it's something that Tottenham will have to look at, because if it keeps happening, they're going to have to get to the root of the problem and cut out a list that looks as bad as it is. But having said all that, it is, I mean, just look at it. It's so bad. It's got to a point where it's completely derailed Tottenham's season so far. So the quicker that they can get these players back and keep them on a run of games, then maybe do you judge Ange Postecoglou when, you know, he's got most of his players fit? I don't know. That's a question that maybe some Tottenham fans don't want to entertain, and that's their right.
It's interesting. I mean, like you said, just to be very clear for our listeners and audio, we have got 10 players currently still absent. Vicario Romero, Van de Ven, Doggy, Bentancur, Basuma, who we understand with Basuma has now waiting further exam with regards to where we are in terms of his hamstring injury. And what we're led to believe is that is more of a minor one than a major one. But I'm very hesitant to say that, because every time I say it's a minor injury, we then get up there and say he's out for 4 or 5 weeks. So I feel, very hesitant to say those words minor at the moment with regards to Spurs. Werner obviously still out for the period. Odegaard, we haven't obviously seen him enough in a Spurs shirt, and he got injured very early on. Brennan Johnson, Dominic Solanke making up that list. We have heard reports that Dominic Solanke could be potentially available for Spurs' second leg of that crucial Carabao Cup tie away at Liverpool, which, again, a lot of games are looking harder and harder by the day, by the hour, by the minute, by the second. What can I say at the moment? Look, we are hearing reports, Darms, and you might laugh at this because you have covered Tottenham as a football club. I don't know how age you're in now, because you'll never come back on here again. Although I seem to get you back every season. I don't know how I'm doing that. It must be either you like me or I don't know, really. I really don't know how we're doing that, to be honest with you. Maybe Bridges having a word. We are in reports right now that some of the players have differing views with regards to the tactics, the training that's being deployed by Ange Postecoglou. We're hearing reports that some absolutely still swear by the boss in terms of his tactics. Others are less than convinced. There's certain players that have reportedly privately complained about the demands and the training schedule that is being put on them. And the club's injury list does not ease some of those players' concerns that their output needs reducing. Now, look, those that have been fans of Tottenham for many, many years will have heard these stories before, under the likes of Pochettino, under Mourinho, under Nuno, under Conte, that in all parts of their reigns, when things aren't going to plan and there is talk on the manager's future, the one thing that always seems to be a reoccurring theme, no matter who the players are in the respective time of their managers, is that training isn't up to the level that they like. It's not something they're enjoying. But the remarkable thing is that, this is a reoccurring story. So I don't know whether, Dom, how much attention you do pay to that. Because, you said it there that, if the players are playing every 3 to 4 days, then how can they be expected to train at game intensity when there's not really enough time to recover for games? Do you see where I'm coming from, Dom? I mean, do you understand those kind of conflicting reports at the moment with regards to the players not enjoying the sessions of being overworked, overtrained? Can that be true?
Do you not always get reports like this from any football club when a football club isn't doing well? Look at Manchester United. You've got, in the last 2 or 3 years, particularly in the last couple of years, you've had so many so-called leaks into the newspapers. Oh, we don't like this, we don't like that. I wasn't hearing any of this first 10 games of last season. I don't know whether you were. All I was hearing is Ange is unbelievable. His training is amazing. We're playing brilliantly. It's going to happen when teams aren't playing very well. So, yes, of course, the buck is going to stop with the manager, because that's how it works. Results are currency. But do the players themselves as well have to take responsibility? And instead of these so-called reports, I can't vouch that these reports are true or not. I just know that when a club is doing brilliantly well, you don't hear any of this. Nothing comes out. Everyone's happy and everyone's doing the thing. But in the end, if they aren't doing very well, what happens? You get all of these reports, you get all of these stories. Oh, the nutrition isn't right, the training isn't right, we're running too much. All of that comes to the fore. And you find that those stories are more easy to get hold of when a club's in crisis or so-called crisis that Tottenham appear to be in just now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Jay, just to get your personal opinion on it from you. Look, I mean, you've been here on many occasions on Last Word on Spurs under, like I say, those different respective managers where we have heard the same rhetoric from, you know, and bearing in mind, I know people feel like we're in this ever ongoing rebuild of the last 25 years. We're in this project that we've been in for however many years. What's your takeaway, Jay, when you're hearing reports with regards to the players not liking the training, having different views over Ange Postecoglou as a manager? I mean, look, can I be honest with you? I can believe that part of maybe having different views over whether his managerial capabilities are there when you're seeing Spurs at 15th in the league. Yes, they've got an injury crisis, but I'm sure there'll be players that are disillusioned right now because they're not having regular game time, because they're out the team, and because of Tottenham's league position. Is that fair, Jay? Where do you stand on it?
Well, yeah, for me, those reports kind of shocked me a little bit just because of the way, you know, the players reacted to Ange after the game. There seemed like there was still kind of real unity behind the manager. I personally, look, the reports could be right, and of course, obviously, you know, the journalist reporting it, I think it's a very good journalist, obviously someone who I do respect a lot. But you see actually what's happening on the pitch in terms of after matches. You've got the players still defending him. You have Porro going over to the fans saying, stick together, you know, pointing at Ange and saying, look, it's us. You know, we're the ones that need to take responsibility. So I think the players are still behind him. And I think that does say a lot. So obviously there is the fact that we've kind of allowed this culture maybe to grow in where the players always seem to get the power. And that's why I want something to change. You know, I am still backing Ange Postecoglou. I really like him as a man. I think there is potential there when everyone is fit. And obviously, if he was backed, I think if he went to another Premier League club that focused solely on football, I think he'd do a fantastic job. I think if you took him to Brighton, he'd do really well. So, but I just think that there's a bigger problem at Spurs in that terms of that the players know that they're going to change, that the manager's the one that's going to get the change. And Spurs allowed that culture to grow over years. And that's something that needs to change now. We need to accept that there is a much bigger problem than the manager. And for me, it looks like the players still, I know maybe performances have been tough. But as Dharmesh said, I think that's largely down to injuries. So, I personally don't believe the current reports about them turning on the manager. And look as well, we're playing every 3 days. Like, when are they actually getting these opportunities to rest? I know Paul O'Keefe, obviously, you know, great friend of the show, pointed out on Twitter, you know, every time after a match, there's a rest day. So there's very little chance to train anyway. So, yeah, that for me is kind of my take on the training situation.
Yeah, I think what I will just say is that I think every journalist that we've been lucky enough to have on Last Word on Spurs will get their information from what they believe to be a solid source. Otherwise, they wouldn't be putting it out there. So I think, like you say there, Jay, I want to double down on what you say there. We really do respect everybody out there that is writing the stories that they're getting right now, because no matter what people think, I think some people do think sometimes in the media, you know, information is put out there just to cause and stir up trouble. You know, generally a journalist will put out something because they have heard from a certain source that this is what's happening. There'd be no foundation to put something out just to cause trouble. There would just be no reason for that or no validation for that. So, look, I think it's fair to say every journalist in terms of the transfer window is working as hard as they possibly can right now. And I say what's going on at Spurs right now isn't easy for us to digest as fans, and we simply have to roll with it. I mean, Doms, you touched upon it there. I think very crucial what you said, that isn't these the typical stories that you hear when a manager is under pressure? And there's no doubt about it, Ange Postecoglou is under massive, massive pressure. There is a massive split in the Spurs fan base right now as to whether he is the right man to turn it around, despite that growing injury list that has decimated Spurs' domestic campaign. There's no doubt about that. But I'm really intrigued to know from you that when you hear the noise as loud as this, and although you're stating there from your perspective, Spurs are backing him, does it feel that the exit is inevitable when you're hearing this amount of noise around a manager? And it's not a matter of if, it's more just a case of when. Because I'll be honest with you, the only manager in recent times that I can think has turned around a huge amount of noise on him it's probably going down the road to Arsenal, where a lot of Arsenal fans demanded Arteta was sacked. And to be fair, look, they stuck with him. They gave him time. Where I disagree with, what Spurs would do to what Arteta would do is that Tottenham are not going to give Ange Postecoglou the established players and spend the amount of money they would, like Arteta has had for the likes of Declan Rice, like Gabriel Jesus, whatever you think about these players. I think we can name probably on one hand when Spurs have gone out in the last 5-10 years and actually bought somebody in their prime at their best. And even that, I'm thinking, God, maybe you'd say Alderweireld. Gareth Bale, we bought him, was a young talent. I can't think of anybody else outside of that. I mean, Jay, do you have any other names ever bring Dons back in? Anyone else you can think of that Spurs have bought in their prime, bar Van der Vaart, in the last 10 years?
No, probably maybe Solanke, but obviously that was a recent one. But yeah, you're right. I think that there's obviously always been that demand to kind of target someone who maybe can bring a profit in the future. That always seems. You're right. I mean, obviously Solanke is an unfortunate one because it was a recent one, but I can't think of anyone. And just look at the impact Solanke's had. I mean, he has been superb for Spurs. I think over the next couple of weeks, we're really, really going to see how big a miss he's going to be. Also, I see someone else on in the comments. I think it was Jamie in the comments. The big factor that we need to remember is that for the last couple of managers, in terms of these being the worst results Spurs have had, they've had Harry Kane and Heung-Min Son in their prime covering over these cracks. And I think that now we're really starting to see those cracks emerge because you don't have Harry Kane anymore. You've obviously got Sonny kind of in the latter stages of his career. So, I think that's another big thing in terms of these results. It's been a long time coming. We've had these elite players. We've wasted these elite players. And unfortunately, I think that's a big factor at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, Dom, I apologise. I steered the question towards you and I steered away from it. I'm so sorry. Just let you come in on that question. I've given you a bit more thinking time if you needed thinking time on it. Can you think of anybody that survived this amount of noise around them and turned it around, bar Arteta?
Erik ten Hag.
Okay.
He was out, wasn't he? He was out. He was going to get sacked after the FA Cup final.
Yeah. So
and they had a review when they kept him. And then eventually they did sack him. But listen, there's clearly going to be noise because of the results. I'm not disputing that. That comes part and parcel with it.
Yep.
All I can tell you is the information we're getting is that they want to keep him, and they want him to work, and they want for him to see this project through. And I know you're asking me about that tipping point, but we can't second guess what Daniel Levy is going to do. I've seen some of the comments in there, like you've sacked managers who've been in 4th and 5th. And now you've got a manager who's on an atrocious run in the league, who's in 15th. So are they trying to take a different approach this time and saying, actually, we do want to back this guy, give him the time that he needs. We will try and back him in the transfer window. I know that's going to get a lot of comments as well because there's also that issue.
That was brave.
If you're going to say back him, then the board need to back him. That's clear. Yeah. Of course, that needs to happen. But I go back, and I know they don't want to. I know you don't want to hear it, but those injuries are absolutely debilitating for this Tottenham team. And we were talking about this off air. Let's use Liverpool as an example. Okay, they've got a much better squad than Tottenham at the moment, and I'm guessing, were you thinking that Tottenham could be above Liverpool this season before the season started? All right, so let's start that as the base. If Liverpool, let's just look at 3 of them: Alisson out for the whole season, Van Dijk out for the majority of the season, Konate out for the majority of the season. And Ben Davies has been out for quite a while as well. So he was one of your next choice centre-backs as well. Dragusin, of course, is the one that comes in straight away after Van der Ven and Romero, I guess. And then an 18-year-old midfielder playing in central defence alongside, who shall we say, Joe Gomez or Quansah.
Yep.
Are Liverpool running away with the league?
They're not running away the league, but I don't. I mean, we had this discussion off here. I just don't think Liverpool are 15th, Dams.
Of course, they're not going to be 15th, but then you've already said that you're not expecting Tottenham to be above Liverpool.
No,
because of the difference in the squads.
No, but I mean, I have to just say, I also listen with. I just think I don't know if again Jay can come in here as well. I just think with the players that we've got still available to the club, and look, I grant 100%, it's a very bad injury, record that we've got at the moment, and we are playing every 3 to 4 days, but. I have to say, I don't know if you agree here, Jay. I can understand there's been a slight drop off in form, but to be 15th in the Premier League, with the respective fixtures that we've had, and also with the players that are available to us, the worrying thing for me is that I have not seen enough in terms of those games from those players to show me they're 100% bought in. And I mean, that Everton first half showed you that. I think there's been certain first halves that have showed you that in the last 8-9 games. I mean, look, the only game we've won in the last 10 in the Premier League has been Southampton. Where are Southampton? I'm not sitting here saying, Dharmesh, I'm not poo-pooing what you're saying in terms of
no, not at all. You watch them every week. But I've not got a dog in the race, as it were.
With my hands over my eyes, I'll be honest.
What I'm saying, just in answer to what you were saying there, is this is what I'm hearing when I hear people talking about Tottenham, and they say, the injuries, but, and it's just sort of glossed over. I think it's glossed over a bit too much for me. This is for me, from an outsider, when I look at the injury list, I think it is just, but every team gets injuries. No one has got injuries like this in the league. Nobody.
Well, Bournemouth have got it. Bournemouth have got your 9 out.
What I'd say in terms of maybe, but I mean, obviously, Bournemouth, the only slightly difference with Bournemouth, I think there were, in fairness, they did have a long list, but they were missing one starter. The other big factor, I think, for Spurs' injuries is it's gone on for so long. And I think Kulusevski's been run into the ground. Pedro Porro, I'm certain is going to pick up an injury soon. He's been absolutely, the number of 90 minutes he must have completed this season is unbelievable. Obviously, Dominic Solanke, we all knew that was going to happen. So it's kind of how long it's gone on for and how thin our squad is. And then obviously you look at Man City, obviously they are in a different league to us, but they've had issues, not nearly as many issues as us, but they've gone and gotten 3 centre backs. They're going to bring in Marmoush as well, so they're bringing that, and then for us, we're just sitting on our hands. We've not done anything. We needed January the 1st a new central defender sign. We needed a forward side. So what are the players kind of thinking? They're thinking, well, we're not being given any help here. Where's the ambition? So where's the drive to really want to succeed at this football club when our owners can't?
One thing I would say, just on the centre-back situation and in general in a January transfer window, this is unprecedented what City are doing, by the way. This is they never do this. They've seen that they need a rebuild. Now, Tottenham's issues are injuries at the moment. So those injured players are going to come back at some point this season. I know people will comment and say, no, it's not good enough, whatever. That's the fact of the matter. You've got players under contract who you would normally pick in your team who are injured at the moment, but are going to come back. So if you think about a player, for example, if Tottenham went in for a central defender, which I don't think they are at the moment in this transfer window, if they were to do that, the mentality of that player, right, you're going to come in. Right? How long are you going to play for? Van der Ven and Romero, say they come back fit. You're out of the team. You're not in the team anymore.
Yeah.
It's not like these two players are gone and it's like they've actually been sold by Tottenham. I know some Tottenham fans will say, oh, actually it feels like it because they've been out for that long. But they are going to come back. So once those players come back, what happens to the players that you've actually bought? And more generally on a January transfer window, clubs don't end a season and think to themselves, you know what, let's go massive in January. They don't think like that. They think about 1, 2, 3 summers in advance. That's when the time to do transfers is at its easiest, because if you start going into a transfer window in January, be it Tottenham, be it anyone else, and you are desperate, showing signs of desperation in that window, if you're a selling club, what are you going to do? You're going to just raise the price because you know that this club is desperate to bring someone in.
It's interesting you say that.
Clubs can't, it's not sustainable like that for football clubs to do that, especially in a January transfer window when they have to be reactive. But the reactive here is to do with injuries. And that's always dangerous because these players are going to come back at some point before the end of the season. So what happens to the players that you've brought in? Yeah. And say you've brought them in on a permanent deal. What happens in the summer? You've suddenly spent some of that budget that was saved for the summer when you're supposed to be doing your business. Then what happens in the summer? You end up having this argument again. Why aren't they signing these players? Why aren't they signing these players? I've been having this argument on set, and I don't want to mention the A word, but it is about their search for a striker. And the line of questioning is, just go out and do it. Do you think it's not just, if it was that easy, every club would just go out and bring in who they want? There's so many factors to take into account now. June the 30th is looming large for every single club because they need to have their finances in order, because these profit and sustainability rules have shown that they've got teeth now, because they will deduct points from clubs if they don't comply with these rules. That's why every single club at the moment is in compliance with them. But that's for the previous 3 years, the rolling 3 years. They've got to make sure that come June the 30th, in that week before June the 30th arrives, they're not in a position where they're having to panic sell players to make sure they're complying with profit and sustainability rules. Hence why clubs are having to be run slightly differently than they were before these rules were installed.
Well, look, Dom, I think just on where we are with regards to Ange, you've made it very clear from your perspective that the club are going to back him. The reason why I pull a face when they say the word back him is because I keep saying this, that we're 21 days into a transfer window and Tottenham's injuries happened on the 8th of December at the time when they lost both Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero in one game, and then 3 days later they lost Ben Davies. So you could argue the club had at least 3.5 weeks to prepare themselves for what they needed to do. I do take your point. Look, Dharmesh, you work in the transfer window. You understand what it's like for a lot of clubs out there, speaking to agents, speaking to contacts. You have a lot more knowledge than I will about this. I just feel, look, we've seen certain other clubs move in this window that I just do feel if you do your homework.
How many clubs have moved in this window?
What, in terms of bringing players in they need right now? I mean,
how many huge deals have we seen?
No, there's not been huge deals. And look, again, I'm not. Listen, I like same as Jamie when he used Man City as a reference. I'm not comparing Tottenham to Man City, but what the point I think I want to piggyback on what Jamie was saying there is that Man City could see their domestic season wasn't going to plan. And look, these players aren't being brought in now to win the league. I think they acknowledge it can be very hard to win the league now. But what it is doing is trying to give them a bit of a boost for the second half of the season.
No. I disagree, Ricky, because Manchester City's position is different to Tottenham's. Manchester City, they're starting a rebuild at the moment.
I think a lot of Spurs fans feel, Darms, on this point that, you look at Spurs' business done in the summer, and bar Dominic Solanke, it's great to see the likes of Lucas Bergvall and Archie Gray coming into the squad. Many felt in the summer Tottenham's business they done was still significantly under strength to go into the start of the season for where Ange Postecoglou felt he wanted Tottenham to be. I just need to remind you this, Darms, I don't know if you're aware of this, or you must have been aware of it, that Ange was asked at the start of the season what he feels Tottenham want to be, and he said, I want to be up there challenging for the league. Now, I'm not saying he felt Tottenham could win the league, but to say that, and again, I appreciate that we've had a decimation of injuries that is very much kind of absolutely decimated the season domestically. At the same time, I think there's been, on my opinion only on this, pure negligence from the board to not have given Ange Postecoglou better tools in the summer going into this season, and to get to the point where we're 21 days in, all we have done is had an alternative goalkeeper come through the door. I just felt the fans deserve so much more for what they are paying, which is the highest season ticket prices in the country, to go and watch a side at the moment that, all again granted with injuries, are 15th in the Premier League. And in my opinion, in the last 10 games, we should have seen more in those 10 games for me. In those games, we've only won one. That was against bottom of the table, Southampton. I think there's been games in there that Tottenham should have won, should have been better in. And I feel the window, like a lot of windows under ENIC, in my opinion, they've really let us down. And it's just, not only just let me down as a fan, they've let Ange Postecoglou down as a manager. This guy...
Okay, 1 second then. So, when Postecoglou took the job, there's definitely going to be talk, not only about his contract, but what kind of approach they're going to take in the transfer market. So they'll be doing transfers by committee. They've got a recruitment team, they've got a sporting director. Everyone will come together and they will discuss how they're going to approach the transfer window. there will have been discussion about the kind of approach that Tottenham are going to take. Now, Tottenham, rightly or wrongly, have taken that approach where they're trying to bring in young players who have got high ceilings and who can develop alongside some of the experienced players that Tottenham have got. And you could argue, yes, and I can take that on board. Is there enough experience to help these young players come through? Because you're in a position at the moment when you've had these injuries and someone like Archie Gray, who you want to see playing in his favoured position, is having to play centre-back in his first season at Tottenham as an 18-year-old kid in the Premier League. It is a baptism of fire for him. I completely accept that. But I'm sure Ange Postecoglou goes into a job such as this one with his eyes wide open and knows the kind of approach that Tottenham are going to take in the transfer window. Whether you agree with the approach Tottenham have taken or not, that I think personally is a different argument. We're talking because you're saying they've let Ange Postecoglou down.
Yes,
well,
I do believe that.
When we need to find out, what was Ange Postecoglou told when he was taking on this job? Did he have his eyes wide open, and did he know that this was going to be the approach when he joined?
But the only thing is, like, it would be nice, like, to show a bit of ambition as well. Like, obviously, they would, he has to be realistic, and he knows. Obviously, it was a fantastic job for him to take, and he probably would have to know he's going to work under limitations. But it would be lovely to see the club go and show a bit of ambition. For me, the big issue is that we didn't have the depth. I think our 11 is quality on paper, and if that's fully fit, it's fantastic. The problem is we went into the season with two quality fullbacks. Jed Spence, obviously, and got his judgment wrong on that. He is obviously a very good option, but he wasn't rated and he wasn't going to be an option. So they needed to go and show a bit of ambition and bring in at least one more fullback, because realistically, we only had two quality fullbacks, and that's just not good enough. Ben Davies is someone that we know is not quite good enough either to play in that left-back role. So we were left short there. Three central defenders, obviously Dragazin being the backup to Van der Ven and Romero. Do you really want Ben Davies to be playing as a central defender when you're competing to try and end this wait for a trophy? Obviously Fraser Forster is the backup goalkeeper. So that, for me, it was just that we were left a bit short in terms of the depth. And as much as they've obviously made it clear to him, it would have been nice to maybe push the boat out a little bit. That for me is just a frustration. I think that we are seeing this because we've been so limited with our options, and maybe should have made done better with in terms of having to bring players in. Jed Spence obviously was a mistake. Maybe Reguilon should have been used, but we've been trying to sell him for years. So it's crazy. Timo Werner, maybe one that he wanted. So look, Ange's obviously made some poor judgments in terms of the players in this squad, but I think that for me, I think it might be worth just moving on to the next question.
I do agree. Before we do, I need to ask Darms a final question. And just to come back on a point, I must have squeezed this in there, Darms, because Darms brought it up. So I've got to finish it on this point. We are going to move on. When you said to me, Darms, a second ago, you said Ange Postecoglou had his eyes wide open when he took the Tottenham job. I guarantee you, Antonio Conte had his eyes wide open. I guarantee you, Jose Mourinho had his eyes wide open. I guarantee you, Nuno Espirito Santo had his eyes wide open when he took the Tottenham job, the same as Mauricio Pochettino. And for a lot of fans out there, I'm not saying all, for a lot of fans out there, I think the common denominator is that when you're at Tottenham, you are having to work under such drastic limitations that, just to be very, very clear, my opinion alone now, I look at the Tottenham job and I just think it's come to a point where I'm not sure if anybody can be successful under the constraints that are put on them by the current hierarchy at certain points. That I'm sure there's been players that have been brought in that Ange Postecoglou has approved and wanted, don't get me wrong. But I think, within that, there's a lot of players that have been brought in as club signings around that the ball field can supplement around that. There's no problem with that. But I just feel that as fans, we are owed to understand kind of what the plan is. Because when you are charging season ticket holders the highest prices in Europe, okay, and with all due respect, you are seeing the club building for the future in what feels like for a lot of fans out there, we're building for a post-Pep Guardiola era. This just feels like it's an ongoing cycle with Tottenham in general that, we're buying for the next 3-4 years. But what about buying for the now? What about buying players for now that are actually going to improve the first team, that are going to make us feel as fans that we can absolutely compete? And I just feel that is where as fans, I think sometimes we're becoming so disenchanted. You know, we love the football club. We adore the football club. We only want to see Spurs be at the best. You know, I think it's the one thing I must just say. Every Spurs fan out there, you know, whatever they think about the way to get to success, we all want the same thing. There's just different ways of getting there. Final question, Jamie's right, we have to move on. And I've completely lost the timing of the show, forgive me. Dharms, will Ange Postecoglou be the Spurs manager at the start of next season?
Oh, my God. I'd say yes at the moment. But I can't predict what's going to happen for the rest of the season.
Okay. Dharms, thank you so much. We're going to move on and we're going to steer the show to Jamie Brown, who's going to try and get us back on track as to where Spurs are in the transfer window 21 days in. Jay, I'll hand over to you. 22 days in for our listeners and audio. Happy transfer window, everybody. Jay, over to you. Can I just say this? Over 6,000 people that are watching the show live right now. Thank you so much for your incredible support for the show. I am joined by my co-host out there who's trying to get a word in edgeways, but I'm not letting him. I'm so sorry. I've got the wonderful Jamie Brown back on the show. I bet he can't wait for the window to end. He only comes out during the bloody transfer window. He can't wait to go back in. And we're joined by, look, iconic Sky Sports legend, broadcaster, reporter, my spar man for the night. Whatever, any other way, he's amazing. The wonderful Dharmesh Sheth is back on the show. And I can't wait to see him very, very soon. Dharms, I love you very much. I'm going to hand over to Jamie and I'm going to shut up. Over to you, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just to touch on transfers. I mean, we say touch on transfers. We've obviously done it a little bit, but just given that injury crisis, are you surprised as an outsider that we haven't done more? Is that something that has surprised you a little bit, given just how poor we have been? On
the face of it, when you have that many injuries, then maybe a little bit, but judging by how January transfer windows usually work, and I alluded to it earlier, it's always very, very difficult to do business in this window, particularly because of the costs that are involved with certain clubs and certain players. Because if Tottenham will want to try and get the best players that they possibly can. Now, some of these players could be at clubs who are in European football, at successful clubs, doing good things for their club. Clearly, Tottenham would want to be in the market to buy some of these players. But by the same token, there's another party involved in this. And that club, who they're trying to get the player from, don't want to sell that player in a January transfer window in the middle of a season. So that makes it much more problematic to do deals at that time of the season compared to the summer. So on the one hand, a little bit because of the number of injuries that they've got, but on the other hand, no, because of the difficulty of the January transfer window. And also you're replacing players who are injured and who are going to come back. And I've mentioned it before, who are going to come back before the end of the season. So where do these players end up going? Especially if you're signing them on a permanent deal, you're actually eating into a budget as well that might have been, say, for a longer term target that is only available in the summer, for example. So it's not as easy as just saying, just go out and sign someone. Would Spurs fans be happy if they just went out and signed someone, but it ended up being the wrong player? I think they'd be even more disappointed if they think, oh, we've wasted this money now on the wrong player. No, why didn't we wait until we got the right player in the summer? So all of this has to be taken into account, I think.
I think as well with like Daniel Levy sorry, Ricky. Just Daniel Levy on so many occasions, like the big thing for me is, when he's tried to save money, obviously he's gone for a cheaper option. For example, Joe Rodon, obviously, I think was quite an infamous example at Spurs. Obviously, Milan Skriniar from Inter Milan was the target at the time. We went for Joe Rodon, paid £20 million for him. The manager didn't want him. He wanted Milan Skriniar at the time. I think it was Jose Mourinho. He got given Joe Rodon, and Spurs have ended up spending £20 million on a player the manager didn't want. And, we saw it last January where we brought in Timo Werner for the sake of buying Timo Werner. Now, again, obviously, as much as I love Ange, don't understand kind of why we did bring him back. But it just shows you, we spent a decent chunk of money on his wages and obviously a loan fee. And I think you're right. The other point to make as well in terms of central defenders, which I think backs your point up, Dharmesh, we've got Luka Vuskovic coming in the summer. Obviously, very, very talented 17-year-old doing fantastically well in the Belgian Pro League. Obviously, it is another youngster, so there will be fans in the comments who are frustrated, and maybe rightfully so. But that's the thing.
About 6,000 of them. Sorry,
About
Jake.
6, yeah, probably all of them. So there is that. So I do get that it is tricky. So yeah, that is a factor. But yes, I think you want to go and get the right players. You don't want to be stockpiling, players that aren't good enough. I think we've seen it so many times at Spurs where we've just bought in players that on the cheap, and then it's kind of limited at what we can do further down the road. So I don't know what you think as well, Ricky.
Yeah, I mean, I probably will need to have a minute and stop talking because I feel like I've taken this into overdrive here. I mean, I know I'm meant to be the host of the bloody show. I didn't mean to take the bloody thing over. I mean, the reality is that I think everyone knows how I do feel with regards to where we are under the current ownership and where we are in terms of the squad and Ange Postecoglou. But I think, look, if you take all that aside of it, I do grant, Darms, look, as I've said many times here, you are working during these windows as you have been for however many years, and you're still 21 and looking amazing. The reality is, we know though that business can be done if you do enough homework, if you do enough due diligence. So I have to ask you, as the outsider looking in, with 22 days in the window for our listeners on audio, because I don't think Tottenham are going to make a signing in this next hour. I think I can safely say that. Although again, I can't predict anything this basket case of a club does at times. Do you, Dams, feel or think are you surprised that Tottenham have not done more than what they've done right now, or maybe are you not surprised? Are you maybe thinking, no, this is probably what I thought maybe an alternative goalkeeper would probably be where Spurs are at, and they're going to go in the last couple of weeks of the window and see what's available? Are you surprised by the lack of activity so far for Spurs?
No, I just mentioned it, yes and no, because of the injuries that they've had. You think maybe they're going to the market, but then these injuries are going to come back. I think with regard to actual targets, I think it's a forward who they want to recruit during this window.
Yep.
When we've spoken about centre backs already, and I know a lot of people will say, well, they obviously need a centre back, but I think because what the Dragasins there, Ben Davies has just come back. Yep. Romero and Van der Ven are likely to come back sooner rather than later now, we're told. Yep. And Archie Gray has shown that he can play there, even though I'm sure Tottenham fans and yourselves would want him playing in his preferred position. So numbers wise, I don't think that's the top of the list for Tottenham in this window, but I think a forward player is, and it's been accentuated now because of that injury to Solanke, I guess.
Obviously, one that we were chasing was Randall Kolo-Muani. He was obviously ended up going to Juventus. So do you think was it a case with Kolo-Muani that he was a great market opportunity? Because obviously, we know what obviously big fee he went to PSG for. It hasn't quite worked out for him. But look, still a French international, played in the World Cup final. So did they see that as a good opportunity, or do they genuinely want to bring in another forward?
They want to bring in a forward. That's the information we have. I think they do want to do that in the final, week and a half of this window. Kolo-Muani was definitely an option. I think Tottenham felt that they did have a chance. They were in the mix, but there were lots of other clubs in the mix as well. And sometimes, you can't always get the player that you go for. That's life, because there will be other interested clubs. There will be other offers on the table, which a player will have to weigh up and decide, right, what league do I want to play in? Yeah, I do want to play in the Premier League. Or Serie A. I quite like Serie A as well. I want to try that out. So maybe it was just a case of that. We understand that Thiago Motta, the Juve manager, was very persuasive in convincing Kolo-Muani to come in and go to Juventus. Maybe could he offer him maybe more first team football than Tottenham maybe could have offered Kolo-Muani? Yeah. I don't know, but I'm not privy to those conversations, but that could have been one of the factors that could have come up. Also, the actual deal. Was it a loan with an option? What was going to be on the table from Tottenham? Was there an agreement on what kind of deal that they could do with PSG? Yep. Did PSG not want to do what Tottenham wanted to do with Kolo-Muani? All of these things will have come into the equation. And at the end of the day, if a player has got as many options as Kolo-Muani has got, and don't forget, Manchester United were very, very interested in Muani as well. They made initial inquiries to PSG. It's not only Tottenham that he decided against going to. He may have decided not going to Manchester United either, and choosing Juventus in the end.
Yeah, that's. I mean, like I say those points are very fair. And I must also point out as well for the balance of the transfer window. Jason, of course, a regular viewer and listener on the show, comes on as well, and I think he's making that point that it's all very well trying to bring players in. There will need to be a balance in terms of having players go out because you can only register 30 players in terms of the squad. So I think, look, for those that might have been thinking Spurs were going to sign 4, 5, 6 players. I mean, God, at the moment we'd be happy with just one. To be honest with you, the way things are going.
You can't get Jed Spence in, like we wouldn't be able to get Jed Spence in the squad. We wouldn't get set a Reguilon in the squad. I mean, my goodness me, how it's come to that. We can't get Reguilon in the squad. But yeah, that's obviously that's a big issue, isn't it? So Jason is right. Look, we need to. There's that issue as well. We need to be looking at players. We can't just sign players.
No, this isn't.
You can't. And then you can't just ditch these players that maybe Werner's not good enough and we don't want him in the squad. But you can't just have these players just sat around. It's just financially, at the end of the day, we hate that. But that's just the reality. That's the reality for every club. You can't just have these players just sat doing nothing, and that's just an issue. So that is something worth considering. But I know that the comments are gonna, and rightfully so, are gonna hate that.
Yeah. No, listen, I get that. I mean, I think people at some certain points now just want to see bodies through the door. But I do go back to what Dom says earlier. Those bodies still need to be good enough to improve Tottenham. There's no just point bringing players in if they're not going to be at the adequate level. It's going to push the team forward. We need to see players that come in and actually challenge the first team. That is the whole point about it, and actually push the club on. Jay, we'll just stick with you because there's been a number of forwards that have been linked with Spurs. Let's throw some of these names at Dom if he doesn't mind, and we'll move on to where we are in terms of, like I say, other positions as we look to wrap up. Jay, I'll throw it back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in terms of the forward line, there has been obviously Rando Kolo-Muani was the initial one. Matheus Cunha, obviously, he looks like he probably might go elsewhere or might stay at Wolves. Jonathan Davidson, obviously an interesting name as well. Liam Delap was obviously one. Marcus Rashford there, as we saw on screen. The interesting one I'd like to hear about, maybe, I think Sky Sports are reporting it as well, about Tyler Dibbling, obviously 18-year-old again. I'm always wary of the comments. I know what the comments are going to be. Another 18-year-old brought in, but is any of those sort of names that we've heard of? Obviously, Tyler Dibbling will be the interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, Tottenham are one of a number of clubs who are interested in Tyler Dibbling, but I think the information at the moment is it won't be pursued in this transfer window, and he's injured, I think, at the moment, so he's going to be injured after.
Perfect, then. He's perfect.
I was watching Michael Bridge actually earlier on the transfer show, and he was talking about Tyler Dibbling, saying he'll have a lot of friends in the Tottenham treatment room. But look, clearly there's an interest in him, but a lot of other clubs are going to be interested in him as well. Southampton won't want to allow him to leave in this transfer window. I guess if and when it looks likely they will be relegated to the Championship unless something miraculous happens, then that could be a deal for a big club like Tottenham or the many other clubs that are interested in someone like Dibbling to do in the summer. RB Leipzig are trying to do a deal for around £25 million, but Southampton have rejected that out of hand. They value Tyler Dibbling far higher than the £25 million that RB Leipzig were proposing. So Tottenham definitely interested in him. I don't think that it's going to be something that they'll be able to do in this transfer window, but they are looking for a striker to help out Solanke. And it just happens to be, it wasn't simply because Solanke's injured. It was throughout this window. That was an area that they did want to strengthen. And I guess it's just been accentuated now and highlighted even more that they do need someone because of the injury he's got.
Yeah, and I also can't see Southampton set into a genuine relegation rival at the moment. So I'm only joking.
Mate, go and take Liam Delap from Ipswich. I'll
tell you what, it's a three-way battle down there. Look, I also have to say on that point, I don't think Tottenham are going to get relegated, but at the same time, we do need to pick up points fast because I'm not sure I can do another backroom thing there with Dharmesh.
Yeah, imagine how many shows you'd have to do in the Championship. That's extra.
Oh my God! We'll be getting Dharmesh on for the post-match shows for Colchester away from Scunthorpe. What's your availability like on a Tuesday night, Dharmesh, when the window is open? Are you around or?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
We can't send Bridgie up there, can we, on a Tuesday night? We can't do that to Bridgie. We can't. Right, let's move on. You've made it very, very clear there that forward is what Tottenham are looking for between now and the end of the window. Look, there has been also some links to midfielders during this January transfer window. I just wonder, like I say, if these are names you've heard at all on the grapevine. You know, there's been links to the likes of, there's been David Fratesi that's been linked. There's been Richard Rios that's been linked to the football club. There's this interesting one around Johnny Cardoso, which I just think sounds like an absolute wonderful name, Johnny Cardoso. I think, again, one which is interesting because Spurs have got a first option on a player. I mean, I think Spurs, I have to say, I've never heard of that term ever, of having a first option on a player. Doms, you've been around the transfer window for many, many years. Did you ever hear about that kind of option on a first option? Surely, if you go and buy the bloody player, is yours. Have you ever heard of a first
Unless there's some sort of agreement we don't know about. But no,
Yeah.
I mean, I've not heard of that happening too often. Unless there's a, you know, you end up selling the player.
Yeah.
And then you put that into the contract that, you know, you can have a matching clause, rather like Aston Villa did with Jadon Philogene in the summer.
Yeah.
When Ipswich agreed with Hull, but then Villa matched that amount and he had to go back to Villa. In the end, he's ended up at Ipswich again, but that's by the by. So, no, it doesn't often happen unless you've sold the player.
Yeah, and finally, also, I think Douglas Luiz is now has been mentioned through the grapevine. I mean, Dams, that you're acutely aware of these players because you discuss them all the time on, obviously, a lot of the transfer shows that are happening on Sky Sports News. Do you see any of those players being a particular interest to Tottenham as we go later in the window? You said a forward is a target, but do you feel, given the injury crisis, Tottenham may look to dive into trying to improve the midfield? Because I think Douglas Luiz is the player that I think many Spurs fans would love to potentially see come to the club, but you are shaking your head there.
I mean, at the moment, it looks like it's the forward is the main priority and the main target. And they're really focusing their energy and trying to bring in someone in that position before the end of the transfer window. So, I mean, if other opportunities came along that were too good to turn down, that can always happen in a January window when you go in there with your plans and think, if it is the plan for Tottenham, right, let's fast forward and fast track the goalkeeper to get Kinski in as soon as we can and a forward. But then if another position that they may be looking at in the summer and a player that they've been after for a long time suddenly becomes available, then, you know, that's an opportunity for them to try and do a deal for them. I mean, you won't need reminding of the Luis Diaz situation when Tottenham, you know, thought they'd got him and agreed everything, but he'd already agreed to go to Liverpool in the summer. And so, you know, I think it was Porto they got him from, wasn't it, in the end? I think they basically said, look, Tottenham have basically matched this deal. We're going to sell him in this transfer window unless you match it now, Liverpool. And Liverpool forced into doing that business earlier than they wanted to. But, I mean, it's worked out well for them in the end.
It did. Jay, we'll hand back over to you, my man.
Yeah, obviously, in terms of maybe some departures, obviously we got some players who are reaching the end of their contracts. I know, obviously, Ben Davies, he's actually one that did extend it by another year, so I think he's all good for now. He's going to be at Spurs for yet another year. Fraser Forster looks like he's going to be one that might run his contract down. Sergio Reguilon as well. I don't know if there's any interest at all in clubs that might want to take Reguilon this month, or is it going to be a case of those two running their contracts down?
I mean, I'm not surprised about the Ben Davies news. I think Ange Postecoglou loves him, loves his character, and what a player to have around the squad. And I mean, I think he's a favourite amongst Tottenham fans, or all the Tottenham fans that I speak to. With regard to Forster and Reguilon, there are pros and cons with triggering an option, because whenever clubs sign players and they have that option, it always gives them that extra year to try and sell the player and make money on the player. But on the flip side, if you're finding it difficult to sell a player, then triggering their option just extends the wages that you'll be paying the player if you can't sell him. And that seems to have been the case with Reguilon of late. You know, he's been on a couple of loan spells, Manchester United and Brentford, ends up coming back to Tottenham. I thought that his contract had actually run down after he finished at Brentford. And then I saw him come off the bench at Tottenham. I go, oh, my goodness me, he's still there. And so I would think, rather than trigger the option, I could be wrong, they could still do that to try and get money for someone like Reguilon. I think there could still be a market for him. So I wouldn't rule out completely Tottenham not exercising that option. Fraser Forster, now that they brought the goalkeeper in, you would probably think the right thing to do would probably be just they'll go their separate ways in the summer.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Reguilon, though, because he has interested a lot of clubs in the past, and who knows, there could be a market for him again in the summer.
Yeah, I bet he can't believe he's back playing. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it, really? He seems to be resurrecting a Tottenham career where it seemed it was going to be anything but that. But look, we will keep an eye on that and see. One player, I think we've already kind of briefly glossed over him. I think many people have want to gloss over him for a long time at Tottenham, but harsh maybe words for me saying that is Timo Werner. Werner currently at the moment is nursing a hamstring injury, which seems to have potentially scuppered any potential move away during this January transfer window. There were murmurs of the fact that Napoli had and did held exploratory talks over a deal to sign Werner.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's true, Doms. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, but given he's obviously got a hamstring injury, do you think we can inevitably rule out any move whilst he's injured, or do you think that's one to keep an eye on between now and the end of the window?
I think Napoli were looking at Werner as maybe a backup option, but I think they're trying to go full speed ahead now for Alejandro Garnacho from Manchester United. So as far as Werner's concerned, especially with the state of the squad with Tottenham right now, I think any kind of future on players like Werner will probably be revisited in the summer unless they decide that they do want to sell him and they get an incredible offer for him. But as far as we know, this is one that won't really have much movement in January, particularly because, as with a lot of other players at Tottenham, he's injured.
Doms, before, like I say, we are looking to close the show, guys, I want to say there's been over nearly 8,000 of you who watched the show live. Thank you so much for your incredible support for the show. I'm going to urge you now, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe to the show so it goes out to a wider Spurs audience. Doms, we're coming to that point where the interrogation is coming to an end. You can start to smile now. Although I feel like I've really been crying internally for a lot of this show, not down to you, just down to this football club and where we are at the moment. This is a nice one for you, Doms. Given Spurs' start to this season and the fact that we are currently 15th in the Premier League, which still doesn't compute in my mind when I say that they're 15th in the Premier League. We are still in all the cup competitions, as you referenced earlier in this show. What do you personally feel would constitute success for Tottenham this season? Do you think a trophy would really salvage what's been a difficult season for Tottenham and for Ange Postecoglou as well?
For me, 100%. 100%. Let me ask you a question.
Yep.
Would you take a trophy and finish 17th this season? And would that be enough for you to keep Ange?
We're 15th now. So, I mean, I feel like I've already gone mentally through this barrier. So, if we win a trophy, we can write the season off and finish 17th and I'll never have to see the table again. The only time I feel like I'm seeing this table is, at the start of the season when you guys at Sky put up the table in the alphabetical order. This is the only time I ever see Tottenham where they are on the table. Apart from that, we should not be seeing Tottenham where they are on the table. But to answer your question for what we've been through this season, yeah, I mean, listen, we of course we would take a trophy. We've had 17 years without a trophy. I mean, would I take 17th? I mean, we're 15th now. It's only 2 more places and we stay up. So I'll probably say yes. I mean, Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I'd 100% take the trophy.
Wait, are you even thinking about this?
No, I'm not thinking about it.
You're talking about a trophy for Tottenham.
Yeah. No, 100%.
You can shut everyone up.
Yeah, well,
you shut everyone up who is directing this bile at you Tottenham fans.
No,
you don't win anything. You haven't won any trophies since 2008.
I'll tell you what happened.
Over, done.
Can I tell you what happened? We will, if we go and win the League Cup, right? We've knocked out, as you said earlier, we've got that Man City, Man United. We could knock out potentially Arsenal in a final, although I don't think our hearts would take Arsenal in a final if they get there, or Newcastle. The rhetoric will be, if we knock out all those teams, tell me I'm wrong here, Jay, the rhetoric will be, it was only the Carabao Cup. I think that will be the rhetoric. But look, to back to your point, I think, look, what would be crazy is if Jay somehow at the end of this season, like Dharmesh said, can you imagine if we finish 17th and win the Europa League and win up in the Champions League with his squad? What would it be like? I just honestly, I don't think I could.
That's an open top bus parade.
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
Of course it would.
Mean, well, yeah.
If you win the Europa League, you'll be out in the streets, mate.
Of course I will. Do you know what makes me laugh though? Is like,
with your Ange Postecoglou mask, Ricky, because you'll have won the Europa League, you'll be in the Champions League next season.
Stars, what you doing to us?
Come on, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. I agree.
all I hear from Tottenham fans is, "Oh, not this whole thing about trophy again." If you win a trophy, any trophy, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, we want to win a trophy. I mean, it would be remarkable, wouldn't it? It would be remarkable when you look at the season we've had.
I've just seen Jordan Hussein. He says, "I would not take a League Cup and finish 17th."
I mean, look, again, it's a question that we open to a lot of Spurs fans will maybe not agree with me and Jay's views. They might agree, Dom's. We know some, again, with what you're saying in regards to the fact of winning a trophy. I just think for some fans out there, they are very demoralised right now, seeing Spurs in the position they're in. Granted, there's a lot of injuries. I just think, it's a demoralising situation to see a club like Tottenham 15th in the league, and that's not me being self-entitled. That's just, I think, the fact that we are all at the moment very much feeling that we're in some kind of illusion and want to wake up. But we have to let you go, Darms. You don't have to carry on the nightmare with us. You can get out. Me and Jay are firmly here for life. You have got to get out. Me and Jay haven't. We're stuck with them. So let's go to Jay to finish the show in what's been an absolutely remarkable edition of Last Word on Spurs, where Dharmesh, I can tell you, is already counting down the hours, days, and minutes till he's back in the summer. Dharmesh, try and keep control of that diary. I bet you can't wait. Jay, over to you.
I'm counting down the end of this window, mate.
I tell you what, so bloody am I. Go, Jay. Please go, Jay.
Obviously, a question we always like to ask the journalists, and obviously the fantastic journalists that come on this show. Obviously, when the transfer window's open, between here and now, obviously 3rd of February, when the window slams shut, how many players how are you feeling that Spurs might bring through the door? How many? What would you put a number on it?
2, including Kinski.
Okay.
So one more.
One more.
One more. One more.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Listen, 2 in a January transfer window is not bad.
Yeah.
It isn't bad.
It's not. No, it's not. To be fair, you're right. I think the context of our season and obviously the injuries that we've had, obviously we're going to have players back and Romero and Van der Ven. See, the worrying is we know that they've got poor injury history. So, again, it would be lovely for the club to show ambition. They've shown that that's not going to be the case. So it's just the way it is. But yeah, I think you're right. In a obviously out of context, I think 2 is good. But given our situation,
what about in context? That could be another discussion.
No. Yeah.
Ricky needs to lie down.
Jamie went out of context 2 is good. What about in context? What about the context of this bloody season? Jerome says here, I'm not happy with 15th, but I would take a trophy and finish 15th. The league position does not matter.
No, Jerome, I didn't offer that. It's a trophy and 17th. I'm getting greedy. I'm not. I haven't killed you. What do you mean I've killed you? I'm genuinely asking that question because you're clearly worried, and Tottenham aren't going to go down.
No, they're not going to get relegated.
I've said it here. They're not going to go down. But surely, 17th and a trophy, you take it.
Well, look, for years, obviously, we've complained about going for top 4 and not focusing on that trophy, and whether or not they are just trying to focus on that trophy. We're getting it now, and there is complaints. Look, 15th is certainly not good enough, but if we were to somehow get one of those cups, it would be unbelievable. It would be unbelievable.
I am trying
John George. I love John George. See, this is the kind of comments I'm here for.
What is John George?
Relegation, but win all 3 cups.
Become the first. We're a couple of first.
That's when you know we need to wrap up and we need all to go to therapy as Spurs fans. This is when we all do need to lay down. I mean, Darmesh was saying I need to lay down with my feelings. John George wants to win all the 3 cups and get relegated.
First team in the Championship with Champions League football. So another first for Tottenham. I've
just heard Bridges put a year in of annual leave, Darms, if that happens. Honestly, look, I think for all of our sakes, we'll see what unravels for this season. But look, it is a tough time at Spurs right now. And I just, again, I'll make this point. I know Jay feels the same. I do feel a lot for our fan base. We've had a difficult last however many years, 5, 10, 15 years. And as a club, I think there was a notion where for a lot of us, moving to that stadium was going to be the game changer. And here I am 6-7 years later talking to. I can't believe I'm in. What universe am I in? Where I'm being interviewed by I've been interviewed by Dharmesh Sheth and being asked, would I take 17th winning a trophy? You know, what has happened to my beloved Tottenham? What has happened to me on Last Word on Spurs? I'm being asked that question by Dharmesh Sheth.
I was trying to deflect.
Do me a favour, Dharmesh, deflect the season for me, will you? Listen, it's been an absolutely incredible edition of Last Word on Spurs. You have been in the consultant room. There's been over 8,000 therapists that have 8,000 therapies that have enjoyed the show. I want to say a massive thank you to my co-host, who probably won't be coming back at the end of the transfer window. That's been Jamie Brown. Jay, we love you very much. Thank you. Where can we find you for all the latest Tottenham breaking transfer news in these next few weeks where people need to get those notifications on?
Yeah, obviously Daily Hotspur on Twitter. If you want to follow the updates, obviously, hopefully, well, I was about to say a busy cut, 2 weeks or so, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be quite that way. But yeah, obviously Daily Hotspur on Twitter if you want to follow that. But no, look, I'm certainly going to be on throughout the season when we're lifting all 3 cups. But
that's it. You only show up for the good times, Jay. You only show up for the good times.
Well, yeah, that's the way it is,
People have really, really enjoyed the conversation. I think when we put into the, hemisphere enjoying the conversation, I think they enjoy the conversation between the 3 of us rather than actually what we've had to talk about with regards to where Spurs are at. They've enjoyed the conversation. Where can they find more of Dharmesh Sheth, who will be here, there and everywhere, as he always is in the closing days of the transfer window? Where can they find you, Dharms?
So Sky Sports News, we got our daily transfer shows, 5 o'clock and 7, Monday to Friday. Interestingly, next week, it's a bit of a first for Sky Sports News, actually. The transfer show's going on the road.
Ooh.
We're going to be at Battersea Power Station
from
Monday to Friday. And there's going to be an audience there as well, which will be interesting. So That's what we're doing next week, which will be quite fun. And on X at Sky Sports _Sheth, on Instagram at Sky Sports _Sheth, and on TikTok at Sky Sports _Sheth.
Dharms is going down with literally now the kids can find Dharms on TikTok for all the transfer news. What is the world we are now going to? We are going to the technical age of where we are in this world, 2025. You can catch transfer news on TikTok with Dharmesh Sheth. He does mean business. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful Dharmesh Sheth, broadcaster, presenter, reporter, long-time suffering hearer of all of our Spurs news twice a season. Look how fresh he looks, though, because he only goes through it twice a season. We have to go through it daily, We go through it daily. But he does work alongside a lot of Spurs fans that obviously do work at Sky, so he doesn't always get away from them. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful watching audience. Please continue to hit like, subscribe. Go check out the wonderful Jamie Brown. Go and make sure you're listening and watching all of Dharmesh's transfer updates, where hopefully there's a lot of Spurs updates to come. We're going to be back with you very, very soon. We have been the Last Word on Spurs, and we're going to see you guys very, very soon. Keep safe, keep well, and as always, come on, you Spurs.